All right, I am going to try something a little different today. As you can probably notice, there's a lot more lighting. I've got like lights behind the monitor. Um, they're kind of hurting my eyes, so hopefully it's not too bad. Hopefully it actually increases the quality of the video a little bit at least. I'm still working with a webcam. I don't have a really expensive camera at the moment. Eventually I'm going to get one, but for right now, the regular webcam will just have to do. I still have my this microphone here, which, I mean, it seems to do a decent job. It's not quite the quality that I want yet. Eventually I'm going to get a new microphone and use this wonderful DAC that one of my friends sent me all the way from British Columbia. So thank you if you're watching this right now. So anyways, happy Friday, YouTubians. I am Aaron Dusk, a published indie author of 2 books, The Mark of Emuli and The Varcross Key. The Varcross Key came out a few months ago, so it's my newest novel. So for those of you that don't know, The Mark of Emuli is a gay-centric paranormal romance with fantasy elements, and it does not feature a lot of prominent gay paranormal romance tropes. One of the main being ABO or Omegaverse. If you're going into my books thinking that you're going to get that particular trope, you're going to be very disappointed. I don't write it, and I never will, so don't ask. I'm currently working on a second book in the series, The Mark of Emuli, and it will shift from the paranormal romance to, you know, full-blown high fantasy. It's kind of, I guess it plays more into the portal fantasy that the Varcross Key does, which I'll get into in just a second. The Varcross Key is actually a portal fantasy romance that features rich world building, you know, a complex magic system. At the same time, the romance is still a key feature of the story, but it's not the main plot of the book. People have told me that when they were going into my books, they were expecting erotica. Sorry, my phone is yeening. They were expecting erotica, and they ended up getting so much more. They were actually pleasantly surprised, but at the same time, if you're going into my books thinking that you're going to get like page after page of hot, steamy sex, that's not it either. I tend, you know, there will be erotica books in the future. They will be significantly shorter, but for like my longer books, they are going to basically be actual stories. They're not going to be just erotica. I mean, erotica is kind of a story genre all its own, but it features more sex than it does. I guess the plot of the story would be more sex-driven, more romance-driven. I don't read a lot of erotica. I do write it, but I don't read a lot of it. So the plot itself tends to be the sex, whereas the plot from my books tends to be the actual plot, the overarching plot of the books, which will feature more, you know, high fantasy elements, more world building, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, if you're going into that thinking that I'm writing erotica, my stories are not that. They do, however, feature very spicy and explicit sex scenes. So there's just a lot more to them than that. So if you like actual like bipedal wolfmen and a lot of fantasy, and you like a lot of gay romance, it doesn't matter which book you read first. They both sit in the same universe. So if you like to lean more toward paranormal romance, read The Mark of Emuli. If you tend to enjoy high fantasy or portal fantasy with gay romance more, then read The Varcross Key first. I would, of course, being the biased person I am, considering that I wrote the books, try both of them. You might be pleasantly surprised. So with the self-promotion out of the way, let's get into today's video where I critique a patron's opening paragraphs. You know, as with the last video, all of the advice I give is to help the writer in their journey and not to discourage them at all. It can sometimes seem like an editor or a critique partner is trashing another person's work, but that's not what they do. That's not what I do at all. I'm here to help make the story better, and I'm here to give advice that, you know, that has been tried and true for me, that has worked for my stories. So I tend to share that with other writers to help them, you know, whenever they're writing their prose or whenever they're writing their dialogue or anything, to make it more realistic, to make it flow a little better on the page, to tell them what works and what doesn't work. Do I get everything right? No, I don't. I'm human just like everybody else. I have my own biases, my own preferences. So I'm going to keep a lot of my subjective critiques out of this and only give critical feedback on the prose, the dialogue, and grammar-specific issues while also stating my opinions on what I liked about the writing at the very end. Let's begin. Alright, I'm going to start by reading the opening paragraphs, and then after that I'm going to open up the Word document where I made all of my notes, and hopefully I don't continuously ramble on like I did last time. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start reading this. Got the popcorn and drink, and now I just need to wait. Devin restrained himself from his excitement. He took a deep breath and looked at the screen. He paused for a moment. I shouldn't be here. I should have stayed home and waited. But I can't wait that long, he mutters to himself. But this ticket is used one time only, and if I waited it would expire tomorrow. So I'm just going to use it today, he said proudly. He looked at the ticket he got, shaking a little, trying to calm down. I can do this. It's not that hard. It's a movie and it's only like 2 hours, so I have time, he said, giving himself some confidence as the movie was starting. He looked around and saw some families were also here seeing the movie. The room went dark, indicating the movie was about to begin. A couple of minutes into the movie, Devin shed a tear as the doors were closed on Sandra, as Joe could only watch his wife die. Man, that's so sad but cruel, he said to himself as he continued to watch the movie. Okay, so there are a lot of issues with these opening paragraphs, and I will get into each one. Yeah, the dialogue is, I'll actually read my notes here instead of going through everything that I've changed. This is uninteresting. We don't want to know about the movie he's watching. We're more interested in why he's here and what's about to happen. Realistically, no one is going to be talking to themselves this much, especially in a movie theater. This would flow much better if you changed the external dialogue to internal dialogue. So, for instance, he could be thinking this, not saying it out loud. It would come across way less awkward if he was thinking these things. I would also emphasize more anxiety than excitement. In the first sentence, he's excited. In the next sentence, he's nervous. This emotional whiplash does not convey what it should be conveying. It's not setting up a proper atmosphere for me at all. It's not setting up the setting well. It's not giving me the emotions that I should be getting as a reader reading these opening sentences. I would get rid of these first few sentences and focus less on his internal thoughts and more on setting the scene. And how I do it, and I do it with a hook that immediately gets the reader's attention. So try some foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is really good here, considering what's going to happen in the future. Also, it's stated below that the character is in his mid-20s, but his voice comes across as much younger. This is something that you've really got to pay attention to. This goes for all writers. Your voice, your character's voice, needs to match the character's age, unless, for instance, this character is very mentally undeveloped, or there's a reason for him to be to sound much younger in his voice. Like, for instance, maybe he could be in his mid-20s, but he grew up, sheltered or on a farm or isolated from everybody else. So he kind of has a maybe a mental stunt in his emotional growth, or maybe the character falls on a different spectrum of autism, for example, and he might come across as being a little younger than what he is. That could be another reason too. But I'm not really getting that with this character. This character sounds like he's pretty much at least mentally stable, mentally normal. So he should be aged up. His inner dialogue needs to be aged up to fit more of an adult in his mid-20s. So just age up the voice to match the character, and this includes the narrative voice as well. The narrative voice comes across as also sounding a little more YA than actual new adult or adult. So also, we're not given any description of what Devin, I misspelled his name, sorry, of what Devin looks like in his human or his werewolf form. And I'm kind of giving a little spoilers here because I've gone ahead and read the whole thing. But we're not given any description, so I have no idea what any of these characters look like. So I'm going to fill in those gaps myself with what I've written here. So I'm gonna. This is how I would fix it. This is how I would write this opening paragraph. So, and of course, this is all subjective. This, I'm not telling the writer that this is how he, this is how they should write their opening paragraph, but it kind of gives them ideas on how to use foreshadowing, how to hook the reader, get them asking questions, get them like and setting up the atmosphere in the scene. And instead of using like telling language, we're showing the people, by engaging their senses. Families filed into the dim theater with popcorn and soda in hand, each wearing careless smiles while Debin fidgeted in his seat, his clammy fingers clasping a ticket he shouldn't have been holding. The overwhelming scent of artificial butter wafted through the room, as if it was being sprayed into the air vents, and the incessant smacking and slurping all around had him adjusting the volume of his hearing aids. I have time. It's just a movie. Notice how his thoughts are in italics. You don't have to say he thought. You can just put all thoughts in italics, and the reader will know that this is what Debin is thinking. Coming here seemed like a good idea earlier, but as he sat there, noting the lack of adequate emergency exits, the last remnants of excitement turned to nervous trembling. I shouldn't be here. I should have stayed home. As soon as he thought it, the lights dimmed and a rumble of bass shook the auditorium as movie trailers began to appear on Spring. The chatter died with loud shushing from parents, as the only lights in the place were the runway floor LEDs and the glow of the movie screen. So what I've done is I've set up the scene. So setting the scene is very, very important. You want the reader to know where they are, and you want them to kind of feel where they are. You want to set up an atmosphere. And in this case, I set up a darker atmosphere than what you were setting up before. He was kind of excited, but at the same time he was kind of nervous. We didn't really get a sense of the mood, the overall mood of the intro. What I've done is taken that mood and shifted it more toward him being nervous, more toward him knowing he shouldn't be there. This character is not stupid. He knows he shouldn't be at this movie theater, but he's there anyways because he thinks he has time. He can do this. He can do this. But at the same time, he's second guessing himself. He's looking for emergency exits just in case he has to make a hasty retreat, all that kind of stuff. All of this stuff needs to come into play. All of this stuff also ties into the foreshadowing as well. The reader's immediately going to know something's not right with this character. They just don't know what yet. So they're going to be asking questions in their minds like, why is he looking for an emergency exit? Why is he so nervous? Why is he trembling? Why is he, holding this movie theater or a movie ticket with clammy, sweaty hands? All this stuff the reader is going to be asking themselves because they want to know the answers to those questions, and it keeps the reader engaged. It keeps them hooking. All of this other stuff, about the movie and everything else, uninteresting. Don't want to know anything about it. Don't need to know anything about it. So I'll read what I've written here. What I've done is set up the scene while sprinkling foreshadowing throughout the paragraphs. We don't know why Debin is nervous, but the reader really wants to know. The atmosphere of the theater is no longer cheerful but worrying. The lack of emergency exits also foreshadows something to the reader, as any normal person wouldn't be thinking this in this environment. Debin knows what he is and that he shouldn't be there, so let's emphasize that. Also, we naturally weave his hearing aids into the narrative, using his senses instead of having another character clumsily look at it as they did in the sentences below. So if you notice, the character does have hearing aids, and it comes across as natural. He's adjusting the volume of his hearing aids to kind of drown out the annoying ASMR of everybody smacking and slurping and stuff like that, because he's got it, maybe he has it up too high. Just emphasize something to give the reader a sense that the character has hearing issues, and then that he has hearing aids. But don't just weave it into the narrative like you did below, and I'll tell you why in just a second. He took a sip of his drink as he watched the movie. He laughed when he saw the Mothra reference in there as he continued to watch it. This is also not interesting. We don't need to know anything about the movie. In fact, it's better if you do not use any references to pop culture or popular movies at all in your fiction. Especially if this is obviously, if this was like a contemporary romance or something, more contemporary, and this is a contemporary uh, piece of fiction, but it's also got a lot of paranormal elements in it as well. Let's hold back the references to any popular movies because some people may not have watched Godzilla. Some people may not get these references. So you're actually taking a lot of readers out of the story and putting them somewhere else that they don't need to be. And also, I would strongly recommend not using. I know you didn't do that in this story, but I would recommend for any fiction writer out there to not drop brand names. I don't care if it's makeup, if it's clothing, if it's Apple, Facebook, Netflix, or anything of the sort. Do not drop references to brand names. It could result in like legal issues later on down the road. It's just a messy thing. You don't want to do it, and it also comes across as being very clumsy. You're relying on someone else's creation when you could just make up your own. This is your world after all. Make up your own things. Like I said, contemporary romance and stuff like that, they may use a lot of pop culture references that people, because it's more for a younger audience, so they may get it. It still seems very clumsy to me, and I wouldn't recommend putting them in your story at all. Crap, I have to go to the bathroom. Again, dialogue. We don't need this dialogue. In fact, we don't even really need the inner dialogue here, and I'll explain why below. He got up from his seat and got to the door. As soon as he did, he bumped into a guy. We don't know what this guy looks like. It's just a guy spilling his drink on the ground. So there's very little description. There's no description. In fact, this is a running theme throughout this entire chapter. Is there's very, very little description, especially personal description, physical descriptions, even descriptions of where they are in relation to the setting itself. So we don't really. It's kind of like we're in a dark room, and everybody is pretty much featureless. So we have to kind of fill in these blanks in our head. I've got this like Biff. This Biff-looking character from Back to the Future in my mind as I'm reading this, because there is no, he's a young Biff. He's wearing a Letterman's jacket. He's a bully. This is all I can think of in my head because we're not given any kind of description. Okay, the man shoved Debin aside. With an angry look. What the fuck, man? You spilled my drink, dumbass. The dialogue is very. It's not very realistic. It sounds very stilted. It sounds almost forced. So this could be, this could be issues of, sometimes when people write English stories, they're not native English speakers, so it could come across as stilted. I'm not sure whether this particular writer is a native English speaker or if he's a foreign English speaker. If English is not his first language. So it would kind of make sense that the dialogue would be stilted if somebody is not native in the language. But again, this oh my gosh. So again, this comes across as very stilted, unrealistic dialogue. He looked at Debin. He looked closely. See, we have a lot of filtering language in these paragraphs, which do not need to be there. He looked closely at his hearing aid. So again, this is very clumsily put in. I know he wants to emphasize the hearing aid, but I did it more naturally in the first paragraph of the chapter, which made it made the disability flow a little bit more into the story. It took less attention away from the disability. It took less attention. Or it didn't put as much attention on his disability, but it announced that it was there. Whereas this just sort of puts all the attention on his disability, on his hearing aid, and this is why he's giving him the angry look, is because he's looking at the hearing aid. He made a sneering look at him. I guess I don't know. This guy doesn't know this guy from Adam. It just seems very unrealistic that the man would react in such a hostile way. It could happen, but usually people have some sense of decorum and etiquette when they're in a movie theater, or when they have an accident, or when they bump into people. Especially if they're looking at somebody who has a disability. Most of the time, they're not going to make fun of that person. It doesn't really flow all that well. Next time fucking watch where you're going, or watch it where you're going, he said as he walked off. So I'm going to read my notes down here. Again, he wouldn't be speaking out loud in a movie theater, and this goes to where he said, I need to go to the bathroom. Especially if he has to go to the bathroom. He would be thinking this, but it's still very clunky. It also seems the only reason he gets up to go to the bathroom and has this encounter with the man is to tell us about Devon's hearing aid. So this is basically using padding, and you're basically killing the pacing here by just padding something out to bring attention to something that could be easily woven into the narrative in another way. This just adds more unnecessary words that the reader has to go through, and it doesn't really get the reader asking any questions. It doesn't really get the reader engaged at all. It just kind of bores the reader. So this is very unnecessary. It's a very unnecessary and convoluted way to mention this, because nothing really happens here to advance the plot. This is why I put this fact about Devon in the very first paragraph, so it would be more seamless. It would be more natural. If he bumped into the man and that's when the main event happened, then it would make more sense to have this scene in the story. But he just goes about his business and sits back down again. So it's all unnecessary. All of this stuff can be deleted. I would remove all of this and the paragraph below and start at 36 minutes into the movie. So as we can see here, sorry, Devon said quietly as he rushed to the bathroom. He rushed as he finished his business. See, this is all very repetitive. It's all very clunky. And also notice how we're using pronouns quite a lot at the very beginning of sentences. And I'm going to mention this below, so I'm not going to give too much emphasis on this now. But you're going to see, as I'm reading this, it sounds very mechanical. Devon said quietly as he rushed into the living... Oh, there was something else I wanted to mention above. And something that I noticed right away, and it happens a few times throughout this story. Got the popcorn and the drink, and now I just need to wait. Devon restrained himself. So here we're missing a quotation mark. That was just sort of a grammatical mistake. But here, I shouldn't be here. I should have stayed home, but I can't wait that long, he mutters to himself. Now this happens quite a few times in the story, and we need to stay in one tense. So this right here, mutters to himself, is present tense, when you've already established that you want to write the story in past tense. So it all needs to stay in the same sense. It's tense, and I think I actually corrected it here. I shouldn't be here. Wait, he muttered to himself. Yeah, I actually changed that here because we want to keep everything in the same tense. Using present tense with past tense really throws the reader off, and it draws way too much attention to the words. It actually just takes the reader out of the story altogether. So keep that in mind anytime that you're writing. Try to stay in the same tense. And if you find yourself slipping, go back and reread the story. You'll actually, and if you go back and reread the story with that in your mind, you will actually see the times that you slip in and out of the tense. Okay, it was 36 minutes into the movie when he sat down. He was on the part when the monster came out. Why does that look like a landslider? Or landstrider? A little meh, but just scarier looking. Again, this is another... He would be pissing off everybody around him in this movie theater if he were talking like this. This needs to be in thought, not in dialogue. So yeah, he would be pissing everyone off around him if he were saying this out loud. Also, anyone who has not watched The Dark Crystal is not going to get this reference. So again, we are putting in references to other movies in your fiction that other readers may not get. Nobody's going to know what a landslider is. Like, let's say that half the readers that read this don't know what a landslider is. I only watched the Dark Crystal, I don't know, maybe a couple years ago, so I wouldn't have known what this meant if I hadn't already seen the movie. And also the show. I watched like both. So, he would just be. Just remember that we don't need to know anything more about the movie. We don't need to know. Actually, we don't need to know anything about this movie. We just need to know what the character is doing, how the character is reacting, what's going on in the theater, and we need to know, and we need all of this to move the pace. You've got to move the story forward. Right now, we are stuck in this dead pace where nothing is happening. Absolutely nothing is happening right now, and it's becoming more and more uninteresting. And at this point, this is where most of the readers would have stopped reading, because nothing is happening. There's nothing advancing the story forward. And in fact, since they're not even given any kind of description, they're not given any foreshadowing, they sort of think that, okay, this is just a guy in a theater and he's watching a movie. I'm already bored. I've already stopped reading. There was nothing to indicate that something is wrong in the story. So just keep that in mind. Right now, we've absolutely killed the pacing of the story. All of this is filler text. It can most of this stuff can be removed. So he said to himself, looking at the screen, he said to himself, looking at the screen more, he paused for a moment, quickly checked if his piece was still in his ear. Thank God, that scared me. God, I need to stop panicking. He wouldn't be pausing because he's not doing anything. He's not actively doing anything. All he's doing is watching a movie. So you can just get rid of he paused and just have him checking if his earpiece is still in his ear. We also don't need any of this dialogue either. So we don't need the dialogue to tell us what's going on. You need to show us in this case. Right now you're telling us through his dialogue. This is a very, it's going to sound kind of mean, but this is a very lazy way of writing this. This needs to be shown. You need to show us. He can panic and reach for his hearing aid. He feels it and then calms back down again. There's really absolutely no need to have him say or think anything at this point. He ate some of his popcorn. He was enjoying himself until the voices started to get a little lower. So here, finally, the story is, there's something happening in the story. So basically, it's taken us all of this time to get to this point where something is starting to actually happen. He was enjoying himself until the voices started to get a little lower. Wait, where is the sound? Deleting the dialogue, just delete this dialogue and show us. Show us the character losing himself in the movie, forgetting about what had originally made him wary of his surroundings, and then describe the sudden silence or the sudden muffling of the sound. Also, avoid starting every sentence with a pronoun, and I mentioned this earlier. You're starting, he did this, he did that, he did this, something, he felt this, he heard this. We need to start these sentences a little differently, because right now we're killing the cadence of these sentences by doing this. We're making it sound very mechanical. It's starting to sound like a list we're reading instead of things he does. He ate some popcorn. He was enjoying himself. He grabbed his hearing aid. He was shaking. And then below here, he quickly grabbed his hearing aid from his ear as he looked at the status of the battery life. The color was red. Deben's eyes the color was red. Deben's eyes widened. He was shaking and freaking out. So once again, we're changing the tense. Deben's eyes widened, not widened, because widen indicates we're in the present tense. So this kind of throws the reader off a little bit. You need to pick either present tense or past tense and stick with it. Also, if you read these sentences, you'll notice right away that the cadence is off. When writing prose, it's important to not only vary your sentence length, but also vary your words too. You don't need to have Deben's eyes widen. You don't need to tell us he was shaking and freaking out. You need to show us. I can condense those sentences down into one and still convey the same thing. He removed the hearing aid, the battery status glowing red in his trembling hand. This conveys so much more than all of this did. And it flows better. It doesn't sound like a list of things he's doing. And when I say cadence, listen to how this sounds. He quickly grabbed his hearing aid from his ear as he looked at the status of the battery life. Okay, so this was a normal sized sentence, but then we have three sentences in a row that are roughly the same length. The color was red. Deben's eyes widened. He was shaking and freaking out. This this is very bad cadence for these sentences, and the reader is immediately going to spot this. So next sentence. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. I thought I charged it. Okay. Big rule here: never, ever, ever use interrobang, ever. Also, and interrobang, as I've mentioned before in the last critique that I did, it is the marrying of two punctuation marks, usually the exclamation mark, the question mark, double question marks, double exclamation marks, triple exclamation marks. No, we do not do this. And in fact, this, again, we don't need the dialogue here either. This needs to be all internal. But yeah, interrobang, big no-no, don't use it. I mean, you can use it in fan fiction because it doesn't really matter there, but if you're writing like regular fiction, just use either use one punctuation mark, like you can use an exclamation mark to indicate a strong emotion, or you can show us the strong emotion by saying he shouted, or he said but did something to indicate strong emotion. But we never ever use interrobang here. He checked his pockets to see if he brought another one with him. But he didn't. If he brought another what with him? Another battery? Do hearing aids have batteries that you can actually put in and take out? I thought they were all like rechargeable now. But I could be wrong. I don't know much about hearing aids. But he didn't. He only heard mumbling noises. Okay, so you just describe the sound he's hearing. Describe the sound when his hearing aid goes out. Don't put it here. We don't really need to know this here. We need to know this up above, here, when the sound starts to get lower, and then describe the mumbling noises. As he was trying to get ready to leave the exit door, this is a fragment, and it's also a question that doesn't quite make sense. Why is he asking a question here, or why is the dialogue a question here? This doesn't really make much sense at all. Again, this could probably be deleted. As he made 2 steps still near his seat. This is another fragment. We've got 2 fragments in a row here that don't make any sense. The sound from Godzilla's roar struck Debin's ear as he felt it strung in his ear. This is a case where you do not want to use filtering language like felt. Show us, don't tell us. Also, you repeat pretty much the same thing in this sentence. Did you notice that? The sound from Godzilla's roar struck Debin's ear as he felt it strung in his ear. Very repetitive. Very repetitive here. We only need one sentence to describe this. So I'll mention that below. Godzilla's roar ripped through the once quiet muffle. So here you can again say, mention that he's only hearing muffles. Godzilla's roar ripped through the once quiet muffles, and Debin reached for his ears before falling to the floor, screaming. So this sentence conveys a lot more here, and we can get rid of all of these other clunky sentences. He tried to cover his... Okay, I've already mentioned... So basically, we've gotten rid of all of this and just condensed it into one sentence. Sometimes you can say a lot more with a lot less. This is the whole point of refining your prose, the whole point of writing itself. You want to convey as much as you possibly can using as little words as possible. And even when you're writing more flowery prose or more poetic prose, the most impactful sentences are always going to be the sentences with the least amount of words, but the most emotion, the most description, the most like, for instance, maybe a simile or a metaphor that really strikes or that really means a lot to the reader. You're going to get a lot more from that than just dumping all of these unnecessary words into sentences. He tried to cover his ear from the sound. This is again very awkward sentence. If you're not a native English speaker, then I apologize for this. But yeah, if you're not a native English speaker, this may sound more correct. But to a native English speaker, this is a very awkward sentence. It's not grammatically correct. But it kept ringing as the roar in his ear continued to ring inside. So again, this is very repetitive as well, and it's kind of unnecessary, especially since I've mentioned all of this in the sentence above. So for here, I mentioned that this doesn't make any sense. Just say rapid pulses of blood pounded in his ears. So this way, it just sounds, it rolls a little better off the tongue. It sounds a little better in your head when you're reading it. He felt his bones feel as they were stretching out. This is very repetitive. And we need to describe what he's feeling. You don't need to say he felt something. Feeling, felt, seeing, thinking, remember, all of these things can come across as filtering language. So you're filtering the character's experience through these words, which comes across as telling. This is why you hear a lot of people say tell or show, don't tell. Filtering language is a lot of telling. You're telling the reader what they should be seeing instead of showing the reader what they should be seeing. So we need to describe what he's feeling. Don't say he felt, describe what bone stretching out would feel like. Drill down into this language, drill down into the prose. He felt his clothes starting to get tighter. Again, we're saying he felt his toe. Describe the feeling of the clothes tightening. Felt tears as pieces of fur started to come into the holes. Describe, this is very wrong. Describe what the fur sprouting from his skin feels like. Is it itchy? Does it burn? Describe that, and then show us the fur sprouting from the holes. No, please no, not now, he cried as his hands started to snap. We could make this a little less awkward by saying the bones in his hands snapped. Fur spreading up his arms. I'm just correcting a lot of the sentence. Spreading up his arms, he was afraid. So we're telling the reader that the character is afraid. Well, the reader already knows he is because of what was just said. So we already know he's afraid by his actions. He's trembling. He's in pain. This is unnecessary telling at this point. This is just added words we don't need. His ears kept ringing as he felt his shoes getting tighter from within until his feet were free as they hit the floor. I rewrote this to make this flow a little better. Ringing replaced the pounding in his head, and his toes now crammed against the tips of his shoes. The strong nylon popped from the soles, and his socks tore as his larger feet broke free. So this gets away from feeling. He's feeling this. He's feeling that. No, I'm showing now. I'm letting the reader hear the pop of the nylon from the soles and hearing his socks tear as his larger feet broke free. So, and then now we can have the reader feel his toes crammed against the tips of his shoes. We can surmise that the character is feeling this already. We don't need to tell the reader that he felt this. We know he's feeling this just from the text alone, from the prose alone. His back popped out as he felt as being kicked down. This is once again a very, very awkward sentence, needs to be rewritten. Describe the sound of the popping as his spine twists and grows, and then describe the feeling of being kicked. Avoid the word felt. Feeling his face stretching out of place. Please, someone help me, it hurts. So realistically, this would be a moment that he likely wouldn't be able to speak clearly as his face is stretching. His mouth wouldn't be able to form coherent words at this point, especially if he's growing, a muzzle or something like that, if he's becoming a werewolf. This would be the phase where he's starting to make more monstrous noises. Also, you don't start a sentence like this and then a quote. This is a fragment, and it doesn't need to be there. Let's see. Realistically, okay. As fur started to grow on his face. As the eerie noises, we're using as quite a lot here. We need to be careful not to use as, before. Even I do that sometimes, and I have to go back and correct the prose to make it sound less repetitive. As the eerie noise. Yeah, what is an eerie noise? Always describe what we're hearing. Don't ever avoid these adjectives. Okay, avoid eerie, avoid strange, avoid, feeling danger or something like that. Describe what these noises are. We don't know what an eerie noise is. The reader doesn't know what an eerie noise is. Is it, I mean, we're still hearing the sounds of the movie theater. The movie is still playing at full volume right now. So we need to hear, we need to be shown what these noises are. We need more description. Never use telling language during these moments. You're slowing the pace down quite a lot here to describe more. So this way it seems like the pacing is still flowing. But if you're just racing through this scene, this is a very important scene. He is transforming. We need to slow it down. We need to describe everything about this scene. Everything about this scene. Because everything about that you're showing is very interesting to the reader. They want to see this transformation happen. They want to feel this happen through the character's eyes. Continued as he saw 3 men coming his way. Get rid of he saw. Just say 3 men came his way, because we already know the character saw. We don't need this filter. We don't need this filtering language. He looked slowly at them. No, describe the color of his eyes. Describe the look on his face. Describe a snarl as his face continues to change, to morph. We need more description. We don't need him to look, again, filtering language, and looking slowly. Why is he looking slowly? What is he doing exactly? Is he glaring? Is he losing more of his humanity at this point? Is he looking blank? Does he have a blank stare to him? We don't know this. We have no idea how he's looking right now. He just looks slowly. Excuse me, sir. Are you all right? Again, very unrealistic dialogue here. This guy is screaming, okay? So this is unrealistic dialogue given the current situation. The guy is screaming and writhing on the floor. There would be no, excuse me, sir. It would be more like, are you okay? It could be, panicked, should I call the police? Should I call an ambulance? That sort of thing. It wouldn't be, excuse me, sir, could you pass the Grey Poupon? This is, in my mind, this is how he sounds to me. Excuse me, sir, are you all right? And it doesn't convey, even though, somebody might say this. Let's say if somebody has tripped over something or has stumbled, and an usher might then say, oh, excuse me, are you all right? Because there's no immediate threat or danger in that situation. He's screaming and writhing on the floor. He would basically get right to the point. Are you all right? So just remember that. Okay, we already know. So one of the workers asked, and by the way, these would be called ushers in a movie theater. One of the ushers asked, as he was with 2 other gentlemen with him. Again, this is kind of unnecessary, because we already know that there are 2 others with him, because it was described below. 3 men came his way. So we don't need to know that there are 2 other gentlemen with him. We already know, so this is unnecessary. As he saw Debin on the floor turning. This is more telling language, more filtering. We need more description. I have no idea what these men look like. What kind of uniform are they? What's the color of their uniform? Are they wearing like a what are they wearing? What differentiates? What are the main? You don't have to describe every little detail of these characters. In fact, it would completely kill the pacing if you did that. But describe prominent features about them. Is one of them overweight? Is one of them taller? Does one of them have orange hair? Prominent things that would stick out to the main character or to the reader's mind. So this way they can have some sort of differentiating between all of these characters that are popping up on screen. All right, so we need more description. Are you having a heart attack? Wait, are you? Again, the dialogue doesn't quite go with what's happening. He wouldn't be asking, are you having a heart attack? He wouldn't even, heart attack probably wouldn't even pop into my head if he's writing on the floor. In fact, I think I mentioned something down here below which kind of makes more sense. This dialogue doesn't quite go with what is happening. If Debin, I keep misspelling his name. If Debin has already changed this much, despite how dark it is in the theater, they would be able to see him. Not only that, if they are ushers in the theater, they would have flashlights on them. So they would be shining flashlights on this person. And they do that all the time. Like they'll have flashlights to check tickets, for example. So have one of them shine a flashlight to reveal what Debin has become, and then move on to the next line of dialogue below. The guy stopped the other 2 from interacting with Debin. Describe this. So we need more description here. How is he stopping them?
Describe the man holding the others back. Maybe he puts up his hands. Maybe he puts up his arms. We need more description. We need to get everyone out of the theater now. He's shouting this. I believe he's shouting this anyways. I think there was, yeah, I think that he's shouting this or he's saying this. It sounds, the dialogue itself, call the police. Hell, maybe call a ranger. He's turning. It's very awkward. We just need maybe he can whisper, or I don't even know if he would whisper, because right now the movie is still playing at full volume. We've got this guy who is writhing and screaming on the floor, probably attracting a lot of attention from everybody else. People would start panicking at this point right now too. More awkward dialogue. Things are happening fast, and the dialogue needs to match the pacing of the scene. Always ask yourself, how would you speak in this situation? What would you say? What would be the first thing that comes into your mind? What would you do? Especially when time is of the essence, as it is here. They looked at him. We already know they are looking at him. We don't need to describe them looking at him constantly. You've actually said they're looking at each other, they're looking at him, they're looking at each other, they're looking at him, they're nodding toward him, they're doing all of this. We don't need any of this language. We can already surmise from the narration itself what's happened. They're looking at him already. Let's see. We already know they're looking at him. They wouldn't be looking away from him, would they? Of course not. He's garnering all the attention. He's screaming. He's writhing on the floor. He's transforming into this werewolf, or he's pretty much already transformed mostly into this werewolf at this point. So they would know what he looks like. They wouldn't be able to tear their eyes away from him. They nodded toward him as they walked toward. Okay, so here we have more repetitive words. They nodded towards him as they walked towards people, telling them to leave quietly. Again, this wouldn't happen. Everyone within relatively close proximity is seeing and hearing everything that is happening, everything that is going on right now. I am sure the werewolf is making snarling, growling noises right now. He's probably howling, what have you, because he's pretty much fully transformed at this point. Even as the movie is playing, they would hear all of this commotion, and the man is literally screaming in pain. People would start panicking. People would start, climbing over themselves to leave this theater at this point, which would cause kind of a stampede. This would be the realistic outcome of what's happening here. It wouldn't be people just going about their business, continuing to watch a movie as this is happening. No, people are going to be like, what the fuck is going on? And they're going to be climbing over themselves to get the hell out of the theater, because that's pretty much what any normal person would do. There's something really wrong happening. We need to get the hell out of here. With that, the fire alarm sounded off, making Devin feeling much more pain in his ear. This is a very awkward sentence. In his ear as it rang rapidly, making him go to werewolf fully. So we've described pretty much a full transformation, and then now he's going into werewolf fully. So we've just gone from describing a transformation to then, boom, he's a full werewolf now. And not only that, but this kind of contradicts the earlier sentence telling people to leave quietly, only to then press the fire alarm. Why would they do that and then hit the fire alarm? That doesn't make any sense at all. Obviously, and as I've mentioned above, none of this would realistically happen. Everyone, I need you to use the door, not use the exit door. Why? Not use the exit, to use what door? We're not told what door this is. Is this the emergency exit and not the exit door? What door is this? Where is this door that we're telling these people to go through? We don't know. And then another thing too, this doesn't seem like quietly telling people to leave. All of this is unnecessary. Just have the third man. Just have the third. Just have the third man speak, because he's the one that gets bit in the next sentence. Said the second man, the third one getting out of the way. Again, we're told second man, third man. We should be going off of the men with the prominent features. Said the fat man, said the skinny man, said the tall man. I don't care, whichever way or whichever one you want to use. But second man, third man, none of this these are all blobs in my head. You haven't described who any of these people are, so I can't get a proper image of who's doing what. In fact, all of this starts to get very confusing, especially as the police officer comes out. Like at this point, I'm not sure who's doing what anymore. Please do not panic. Leave in an orderly line. With that, he felt, and I crossed that out because we don't need felt, something sharp tore into the usher's shoulder, and he fell. Okay, so we don't need to have him falling down because we can just have him fall. And he fell, blood from the open wound soaking his shirt before dripping onto the carpet. Let's see, and then I crossed out this. Watching Devin slowly get up as he saw the other worker was in his way, he immediately attacked him. Describe Devin getting up using a stronger verb instead of an adverb. You rely way too much on the adverb slowly. I've seen this used quite a few times already in this story. Devin rose to his feet, towering over the men in his way as he lunged at one of them. You can do that. It just makes it flow a little easier, a little better, and you're not relying too much on him slowly getting up or slowly standing. Have him just have him rise to his feet, and that kind of indicates that he's getting to his feet. He's rising to his feet as a monster. He's towering over the men in his way. So he's doing this very particularly. He's already doing this slowly, and then he lunges at one of them instead of immediately attacked, because immediately we're now using more adverbs. Just say he lunged at one of them. So this way we can get rid of immediately attacked and use a much stronger verb, which is lunged. A woman screamed, seeing the werewolf in sight. Describe the woman screaming. Describe this woman and describe her screaming. She might, describe how she's reacting. She could be panicking. She could be, flailing her arms. For all we know, we don't know. And also, we know what she's seeing. We don't need to have her see the werewolf in sight. And by the way, this is very repetitive. Seeing in sight. Get rid of this repetitive language. Get rid of this telling, this filtering that we've got here in this sentence. So we already know what she's seeing. We can describe what Devin is in the next sentence. Devin, now a full werewolf, turned from the man. Okay, so I once again crossed out looked because we don't need looked, and turned his direction from the man to the screaming woman. The other man that was standing, so that we've got like the other man. Who's this other man? Is he the other usher? Okay, so he was trying to get everyone out. So we don't know who this man is. We have no idea. We have no idea who's doing what, really. The other man that was standing as he was trying to get everyone out. The other man that was standing as he was trying to get the other man out. This is a fragment. This doesn't make any sense. So yeah, this right here is a fragment. We need more descriptors here. We need to know some prominent features of these men to tell them apart, because saying other man, second, third, or first man does nothing but confuse the reader. Devin rushed toward him. He tried to defend the crowd. Who did this? So describe this. What does it mean to defend the crowd? Did he block the werewolf's way? Did he grab a broom handle and swing it at him? When writing prose, it's good practice to drill down into the scene so that you can paint a more vivid picture in the reader's mind. As he almost got towards the crowd, he was knocked back by force. Breaking the seats in one of the rows, the man stopped and turned around, watching the man walk toward the other werewolf. This is so confusing. I have no idea what's going on here. This is very very clunky. The man. I had to read this 3 times to figure out what was happening, and I still didn't know until the next sentence. And I'm reading this now because I did this all yesterday. Reading this now today, and it still confuses the heck out of me. The force needs to be described. Is it a gunshot? Is the police officer just supernaturally strong? I don't know. Also, the way this is worded, the man was the one. Also, the way this is worded, it was the man who broke the seat, and it wasn't the impact of Devin slamming into the seat. So this needs to be reworded in the way that Devin breaks the seat by slamming into it. Also, keep in mind repetitive words when you're writing sentences. The man is repeated and towards is repeated. So both of those are repeated in these sentences. I see I got here in time. It was an officer. Describe the officer. Is he in uniform? In fact, I would not even say officer. Just say a man in an officer's uniform, or in a blue uniform or something. Just anything to describe some prominent features of this man who is walking in here. He walked towards Devin. Again, we're using towards a lot here. As he was slowly getting up. Again, slowly is repeated way too many times in this chapter. Devin was just hit by force. He should be stumbling to his feet, priming himself to attack again before snarling. So he's snarling back. This is worse than I thought. He's coming, and he's not coming too. I also get rid of this dialogue. This is very clunky, and have the officer prime himself to do whatever he did that forced Devin back. I still have no idea how he did that. Was he using a weapon, like a werewolf repellent, something? We don't know. We don't know what he did. He smelled blood on him. Who smelled? Devin smelled blood on who? On the officer, or on the usher? He looked back at the worker, and then looked back at Devin. Again, we're doing looked and looked. He saw him charging straight for him. This is way too many pronouns. We've got so many he's and hims that we don't know who's who. We have no idea who's doing the doing at this point. We've got to be very careful with this. There's also so much filtering going on here, and it's very clunky. These sentences can be shortened to one sentence and still get the same point across. Like I mentioned above, less is more. Also, he saw him charging is repetitive because you show him charging in the next sentence. So, and for example, I just wrote a single sentence down here. The metallic scent of blood pulled the werewolf's attention from the officer to the usher. And then we can have him lunging at the officer. Charged back at him and growled at the officer. Charged. This is kind of this may be more of a subjective take here, but charged is not really a word I think of when I think of a werewolf. I think of I think of lunging. I think of pouncing. The things that werewolves do. They're ambush predators, kind of, in a way. Charging is a word I think of when a bull is pissed off. A bull might charge at somebody or charge at a matador holding a red cape or something. He snarled up the officer before lunging at the injured man. Or since we already used the lunging in an earlier sentence, he can pounce, so that it's not repetitive. The other worker was watching the whole situation as the officer was holding Devin off. Why do we need this? Now we're filtering what we see through the other worker, which we have no idea what he looks like or which one he is, because there's been no description of anybody. I don't even know what Devin looks like as a werewolf. What color is his fur? How tall is he in relation to the men? I don't know if he's bipedal or if he's a four-legged werewolf. Also, what does holding Devin off mean? What is he doing to hold Devin off? Remember what I said earlier about drilling down into the narration to describe what is happening. Is he holding on to Devin's neck? Is he firing tasers at him? Did he jump onto the werewolf's back? We don't know. We have no idea. He didn't let him go. Again, we're not given any description of his actions to get to this point. He got back to the row. He got back to the row where the other two were injured, trying to take them out. The other two were injured. Wait, who was the other one that was injured? I thought it was just one guy who was bitten. Again, this is not made very clear at all. The other two who were injured, trying to take them out the exit door. I thought we weren't supposed to use the exit door. What door is this? Is this the emergency exit door? Is this the back door? What is this? And then again, I mentioned down here, trying to take who? Who is doing what? Is the officer trying to take himself and the werewolf out to the exit? Is the officer trying to take the two men out the exit door while holding onto the werewolf? The scene doesn't make much sense the way it's worded. The officer had pushed Devin away. Okay, so I basically changed this. The officer pushed Devin away and tossed the werewolf. Again, this doesn't make much sense to me. So he wouldn't go near him. The officer tossed Devin back and forth. He tossed a werewolf back and forth. The officer tossed a werewolf, a fully changed werewolf, back and forth. Who is this officer? Like the Terminator? Is he Arnold Schwarzenegger? What's going on here? Is there like a huge size difference between humans and werewolves in this world? I mean, we're not even given the size of the werewolf. We don't know how big this werewolf is in relation to the other humans. So I'm sitting here now picturing this little tiny midget werewolf being tossed back and forth by this humongous muscle-bound officer. We're not given any description, so my mind is going to these ludicrous places right now. As he tried to get Devin situated, he heard, again, we've got more filtering here. We don't need the he heard. So I rewrote this. As he tried to get Devin situated, the exit door clicked open and slammed shut, but there were still people stumbling into the aisles. So I just got rid of popped and closed because, one, pop and close is present tense, so you've now changed tenses back to present, but it doesn't really describe much of what's going on. Clicked open and slammed shut versus popped open and closed. So we need to have more description there of the sounds. Always drill down into the sounds, what people are hearing, what the reader is hearing in these sentences. There was someone still there. He saw the other worker getting the other two out. I think this was already mentioned in the sentence above. This doesn't need to be here. This is just repetitive. Damn it, how long does it take before you can calm down? Again, I mentioned do not use interrobang. Have the office, because you've already said the officer shouted. In fact, I think I put that in there. The officer shouted as he slammed the werewolf. So again, I'm crossing out the pronoun because we're using way too many pronouns here. We need to start describing who these characters are. And I write in here, be careful not to overuse pronouns because we don't know who is doing what to who. To the ground. Again, is this a human officer, and how is he overpowering a werewolf, a full-size werewolf? Did he tranquilize him? If he did, this needs to be described earlier. Here I got rid of the pronoun and put in the man waited to see if he would struggle under him. I just got rid of a lot of the awkward wording in this sentence. He took a deep breath and looked closely at Devin, seeing if he would wake up. More and more filtering language. Looked and see. We're repeating a lot of this in these sentences, and it's just becoming very exhausting for the reader at this point. He took a deep breath and examined Devin closer before the door to the lobby swung open. So I just got rid of all of this unnecessary telling, all these unnecessary telling sentences. And I'm going to end it there. Otherwise, I'll be spending the next another hour on this. But I hope that this actually gave some idea of how to get rid of a lot of unnecessary telling, of how to avoid filtering language, being careful to use descriptors instead of pronouns. So this way the reader has an idea of who's doing what action. And kind of gives you an idea how to make sentences flow a little better, how to increase the cadences, or to make the cadence of the sentence much better in the mind, so that it flows a lot better. Because a lot of these were very awkward sentences. Again, I don't know if the author or if the writer was native English speaker. So if they're not, then this would make a lot of sense. But yeah, always remember, to use less is more in a lot of cases. The less words you can use, the more stronger verbs you can use instead of adverbs, the better. You want to kind of use adverbs when necessary. If you can take an adverb out of a sentence and still get the same point across, then it's not necessary. But if the adverb adds nothing to the sentence, and you could use a stronger verb in place, use the stronger verb always. It'll make the sentences less clunky, it will make the sentences flow better, and you'll use less words. You're cutting down on the word count, which is always a good thing when writing prose. So what I did like about this was the werewolf transformation. I just wanted more of that, and also what could really use the edit was, or what you could really get rid of was this entire beginning. The entire beginning is very boring. In fact, A lot of readers will usually stop reading after this sentence right here, or after this sentence right here, because we're not really given anything. We're not really given anything to ask. And if they do manage to get past this, they're going to get to this point where he gets up and then comes back to a seat again and nothing happens. They're going to stop reading here. Because at this point, the reader's like, okay, obviously nothing is happening. I'm already bored. I'm going to go ahead and stop reading this. It's very important that your first sentences, that your first paragraphs have a strong impact on the reader. And that's what they mean by hook. Hook doesn't necessarily mean action, like I've written in my blog post about beginnings. A hook doesn't necessarily mean you're stuffing a whole bunch of action into that very first sentence. It basically just means writing something that gets the reader's attention, that gets the reader asking questions, like, gets the reader interested in. Like here, families filed into the dim theater with popcorn and soda in hand, each wearing careless smiles while Devin fidgeted in his seat, his clammy fingers clasping a ticket he shouldn't have been holding. This right here makes the reader go, wait a second, something's not quite right here. And not only that, but we're also foreshadowing a little bit more. Wearing careless smiles kind of gives the reader a sense of, oh, these are unsuspecting victims or something that is about to happen here. Careless smiles sets an atmosphere. It sets the tone of the story. We want to set the tone. We want to foreshadow as much as we can, but we also don't want to, beat it over the reader's head either. Using subtle words like this kind of, it makes the reader ask questions. It makes the reader going, okay, this is not just a theater. Something's going on here. Something weird is happening here. We can also have an overwhelming scent of artificial popcorn. Devin might have a stronger sense of smell. Really hone in on what Devin is at the very start of the sentence, but don't beat it over the reader's head either. We want the reader to be asking questions like, okay, what's going on here? Why does this sound so foreboding? And then of course we're also fed in the hearing aid as well. So we're using all of this, we're setting the scene by engaging the reader's senses. We're also feeding the reader information feeding information about maybe the reader's or the main character's disability by now having him adjust the volume to get rid of all of these sounds that he's hearing, these annoying sounds. So just keep that in mind when you're writing these things, when you're writing especially beginnings. You want the beginning to be as interesting as possible. If the reader is not asking questions, if you're not holding the reader's attention, the reader is likely going to stop reading. So with that said, I'm going to leave this here, and I hope that you guys got some good information out of this. If you did, please remember to like and subscribe, share this with, other writers who may also benefit from this as well, or maybe you might have learned something yourself. So with that, I'll see you guys next time.